Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Today we uh, go or come back to the Jatakas, the stories from the previous lives of the Buddha as recorded in the uh, discourses in the Nikayas. Some of them are in the Nikaya, some of them are in the official canon, where we see them in different suttas, different discourses, popping here and there, including in the Vinaya. But officially, the Jatakas, they occurred. I'll look here and live audience and the camera as well. But they were compiled within the book that we have under the heading of the Jatakas, sometimes called Jataka Tales, Jataka Stories, and included within the section of the discourses, we call them the Khuddaka Nikaya, or the minor discourses, which we, over time, they were collected and compiled and put, into that big series of volumes, codified under that. Anyhow, so I think this is week number 3. Yes. Or session number 3. For this week, I wanted to discuss or share with you the tale or story where it incorporates a discourse, a very famous discourse that we have in the suttas called the Samanya Phala Sutta, the fruits of recluseship. We get the actual discourse, but it's connected with the person who came asking the Buddha about the fruits of recluseship. What are the benefits, basically, fruits? Like, is there an outcome? For example, you go to study a specific course at school, university, you go into a trade school, to have the expertise in doing something, in being able to earn a living, this, that, become a medical doctor or a lawyer, etc. That would be the fruit of that discipline. So here we will see, I don't know, I think I might have mentioned him before, Prince Ajata Sattu. He will come and speak with the Buddha and ask questions. This Jataka is called the Sanjiva or Sanjiva Jataka or Sanjivaka Jataka, number 150 from the Jatakas. So I don't know if I did mention King Bimbisara, but King Bimbisara was a very famous king around the time of the Buddha. In fact, he had met the Buddha before being the Buddha, meaning when he was Siddhartha Gautama, he had seen him, and there's a beautiful sutta discourse from the Sutta Nipata where he is standing there on the veranda of his palace. And he's looking around and he's seeing the people, the public down in the market, this, and then he says, that recluse, there's something special about him. So he sends guards, he sends, I guess, scouts to go and find out who this person is, because the way he carried himself, this recluse, this monk, he was not a Buddha yet, he was still searching. That said so many things about him, his walk, his demeanor. So King Bimbisara This was the kingdom in the city. His name is a royal city of Rajagaha. Today we have it still in India. It's called Rajgir. If you go to middle section, up north section of India, you see it, middle country, it's called Rajgir. So he wanted to give him like to divide his kingdom in two. He said, I don't know who you are, but you have these special qualities. And if you are willing to walk away from this life of a monastic, I am willing to give you half of my kingdom. How many people do you know could do that today? How many kings can do that? How many rulers of a country or even a company, a CEO doing that? We never hear this. The personality of Siddhartha Gautama was so impactful that King Bimbisara said, oh. And Prince Siddhartha said, Maharaj, a great king, I am already the son of a king. I have my own kingdom. I left it behind. So I walked away from that so that I can pursue the holy life, being a monk, so that I'm looking for the path. He was on the way to attaining freedom, Buddhahood. And King Bimbisara was so impressed. He said, please, in that case, promise me this. When you attain, you come back to Rajgir, and you teach me and my subjects, my citizens, the Dhamma that you will attain. And Siddhartha Gautama agrees. So when the Buddha becomes the Buddha, he comes back to Rajagaha and he teaches the Dhamma to King Bimbisara. Based on that discourse, King Bimbisara himself attains to the first level of awakening. He becomes a Sotapanna along with his retinue. So he was a noble disciple. Now, he had a son. He had many sons, but the crown prince's name was Ajata Sattu. Now, the problem here was he was the crown prince. He was going to become the king, in time to, be given the throne, to inherit the throne from his father, King Bimbisara, who, by the way, when he became a noble disciple as a Sotapanna, once returner or stream winner, we call him, automatically the desire of the world to have and obtain and own things, power, diminishes tremendously because the individual person loses that self-identity to become so identified with personality of this is me, this is who I am, my personhood, all that. They also relinquish the sense of blindly following rites and rituals. But above all, they lose the doubt that's within the hearts of everyone who is not a noble disciple yet, who is not an arahant. And that is, where am I going? What am I doing? Is this the right path that I'm pursuing? So the doubt towards the Dhamma disappears for a noble disciple. And here we have a special being, King Bimbisara, who attained to that. Now let's change the scene. We go back to the Buddha and his circle of students. Devadatta is a name I think I've mentioned maybe twice, if not more. He was the brother-in-law of Siddhartha when he was married to Yashodhara, princess, before he left, Siddhartha left the kingdom to pursue the spiritual path. So eventually, Devadatta came and joined the Sangha. He became also a monk. And he did practice meditation, so he was even able to attain certain levels of concentration. We call them jhanas. So he had some psychic abilities developed in him. Now, because his heart was not in the right place, what he did was he wanted to topple the Buddha. He wanted to take over the Sangha. He wanted to get rid of the Buddha. Because that happens when a person is still driven by hungry for power and the sense of identity. He was not a noble disciple, as you can tell, because of his pursuit. He had anger, he had desire, lust for power, and he wanted to replace the Buddha in his position as the king of the Dhamma, of the Sangha. Now, he couldn't go to King Bimbisara because he knew that King Bimbisara was already set. He had strong faith in the Triple Gem, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Why? Because he was already a noble disciple. So he went to his son, Prince Ajatasattu, but he did it in such a sneaky way. Remember, he had psychic abilities? So he secretly appeared in Prince Ajatasattu's chambers, in his room, but in the body of a young boy. This is Devadatta, who was a monk, who was supposed to be a bhikkhu. So he left all that is holy about being a bhikkhu, about living the holy life, being a religious practitioner, a student of the Dhamma, a student of Lord Buddha. He left it all behind because he went the wrong path, down the wrong path. So he appeared in the prince's chambers in his room in the body of a young boy. And around his neck was maybe one or at least one snakes, poisonous snakes, all created by his mind. And when you have that level of a concentration, we call it the jhanas, you can focus your mind and you can manifest things. You can manifest your appearance. There are certain abilities that come along with that, if that is the person's desire. And he definitely desired to make, something come out of those psychic abilities. So he wanted to put them to use, and he did. So now you can imagine it's nighttime and you're Prince Ajatasattu, and there's this little boy who's maybe even has an aura around him, you're terrified. And there's snakes around the neck of this child. And the child is so serene, and it's yogi-like. It's terrifying. And he says, what can I do? Who are you? Who are you? And then he transforms himself into the shape of Devadatta, back to his normal shape. Now the prince is very much impressed. And Devadatta says, basically, you need to take over the kingship. You need to take over your father's throne. But he says, I am in line, I am the next in line, so there's no hurry. He had a plan. Devadatta wanted to get rid of the Buddha, but he could not do that without some authority coming in and forcing that, because his level of understanding was that limited. He thought that by the king's power, and the king Bimbisara was not going to help him. But if the prince, if he approached the prince would actually, and impresses the prince enough, the prince might topple the king, he becomes the king, and he could place me as the Buddha, the new Buddha, the next Buddha. That was his plan. That was his evil plan. So the prince argues and says, no, my father has been so kind. He hasn't done anything wrong. And he says, no. So he plants these evil thoughts in the mind of the Prince Ajatasattu, to the point where, unfortunately, Prince Ajatasattu imprisons his own father, places himself on the throne, and in time his father dies as a captive. So he becomes responsible for the death of his own father, and that is already bad enough. He does that to a noble disciple, which is a rare being. This is no longer a Putujjana. Putujjana is someone who's a majority of the population of the planet and other planets, other beings who live on a certain level of understanding. They don't respect the noble ones. They don't see any value in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. They cannot recognize anyone who's awakened. They cannot, their hearts do not understand and speak to the Dhamma so well as a Sotapanna does, who's on, even though on the lowest level of the four attainments, remember the first stream winner, King Bimbisara was at that level, so it's a unique position. These are individuals who, at the most, come back 7 more times in samsara before they become fully arhats. So this is a unique person. Plus, he was his own father, which, because he ended up causing the death of his father, automatically that ends a person's spiritual career as far as attaining nibbana is concerned in that particular lifetime. In this, what I'm trying to say is, Prince Ajatasattu lost the ability, even if he were in the presence of the Buddha and the Buddha gave him a discourse which would have awakened him, which would have gotten him at least to the first level, he would not be able to. Why? Because he had killed his father. It's called patricide or matricide if you kill your own mother. That's why these two things are, in addition to harming or causing the blood or spilling the blood of a noble disciple, or especially a Buddha or an Arahant, these are terrible things. Causing mother and father to die, one's own, completely cancel out in that particular lifetime. We call it ditevadamme, in this particular life or in this particular birth, the possibility for that person to attain even the lowest level of awakening, which is a terrible, terrible thing. The person might still end up making merits, of course, if they choose to engage in such acts. Anyhow, so this is the background. Now, Ajatasattu is no longer prince. He is King Ajatasattu because his father is long dead, gone. Meanwhile, in the court, and the people are calling him a patricide. They don't trust him deeply. Above all, he is unable to fall asleep at night. He's waking up with nightmares. Why? Because at that time, what had happened was Devadatta, who had also tried to kill the Buddha at least 3 times, he himself engaged in one particular act. He rolled. If you go to Rajaga, there's a place called Gija Peaks. On the way up there, there's a cliff and there's rocks. So one day he goes up and he knows the Buddha is coming up the narrow path. And Devadatta, being a monk, he was so blinded by his own lust and anger and resentment of the Buddha, he calculated. It's a crime. He calculated how to push this boulder down the hill so that it could come down and kill the Buddha. It's a boulder, it's a big rock. And it misses him. It misses him, but a piece of the rock, there's a sliver of it, it's like a ricochets and comes and hits and cuts open the foot from the side of the Buddha, enough so that it starts gushing blood. So he spilled the blood of Buddha, which is terrible for the person. Not long after that, when he tried to also create a schism, a division in the Sangha, he got sick, and he's starting to have doubts because he's hearing that this is not good for me, and he's now terrified of the outcome. So he begs a few students that he had left, because everyone went back to the Buddha because he divided the Sangha and they thought he had some spiritual qualities, but they saw that this was a below average person and he had a very dark side about him. But a few people were blind enough to follow, and he asked them to take him back to the Buddha so he could apologize in person to the Buddha, but he doesn't make it. Halfway on his journey back, he gets off of this, stretcher or something that they were helping him, carrying him, because he was sick. Um, he's trying to go get to the water or something and do that. The earth swallowed him. Basically, think of it as a quicksand. The companions, they don't fall for that. They don't die from it. He dies. He gets sucked in. So now the news spreads around. It reaches King Ajatasattu. So now he is terrified. Plus, he's having nightmares. Plus, he heard how the Buddha had mentioned that Devadatta, because of his evil actions, he has ended up in hell. So now the king is terrified. He's afraid, but he cannot, for the life of him, have the courage to go to the Buddha to apologize for what he has done, for his role in this, even though Devadatta was behind it, but he also was, in a sense, the person who pulled the trigger. He was responsible for his own father's death. And for encouraging Devadatta, he built him a monastery, this and that. So he was fooled, and he knew that at that point. And he was regretting it, but he didn't have the courage to go to the Buddha. So one day there's a big celebration because the seasons are changing and the harvest and all that. So there's a big celebration, a festival going on. And the king is surrounded by with all the pomp and glory of a king in his court and outside, and he wants to go to see the Buddha. But again, he has an ego. He says, how should I do this? He says, this beautiful moonlit night, it would be great to go to see a wise sage in my kingdom. I wonder who would be the right person to go to. Meanwhile, he knows that his royal physician, Jivaka, was sitting right there. Jivaka was a big supporter of the Buddha, of the Sangha. He used to come to the monastery to help heal the Buddha's body. He was there to take care of the wounds of the Buddha when I mentioned the foot injury, as well as the monks whenever they got sick. But he had a big mango grove, Jivaka. He was wealthy, but he was a big supporter. He was a devout disciple of the Buddha as well. But the king didn't go and ask him. He didn't say, Jivaka, should we go to the Buddha, your teacher? He didn't go. He didn't say that because, again, he has a pride to deal with. So he's doing a sidewinded way of kind of coaxing Jivaka to say, but, why don't we go to my teacher, king? Meanwhile, his other counselors say, oh, Lord Maharaja, there's my teacher, Nigantanataputta, who was Mahavir of the giants. The other one says, oh, there's Ajita Kisakambali. Oh, there's the Sanjaya, Belataputta, etc. He's not interested in going to anyone because he has already gone to them in the past, the king. And they were not impressive to him. But he knew there was one person, but he was too ashamed to even mention his name. And because Jivaka sees that, let them push for their own teachers, I'm not going to name drop, as they say. Until the king turns to Jivaka and says, what about you, my dear Jivaka? Do you happen to know someone that we might go to honor and pay respect, a sage? And Jivaka smiles and he gets up and he turns towards the direction of the Buddha and he says, Itipiso Bhagava Arahan Samma Sambuddho Vidyacharana Sampanno Sugato Loka Vidunittaro Purisadam Sarati Sattadeva Manusanam Buddho Bhagavanti. basically an honorific series of honorifics, qualities of the Buddha, being the teacher of gods and men, humans, the teacher for all, the Buddha, the Arahant. And then he says, my king, my lord, of course, the Buddha, if anyone can be the right person to be celebrating this beautiful day with and to learn about the recluseship and the fruits of it, he would be the person. The king says, let's go. Get the elephants ready, get the horses ready at night. Now, because he was a king, he's also always terrified of possible assassination, because he knew that his father was loved by his people. He was beloved. So he was always afraid, because he was also having nightmares. He knew that what he had done was wrong, and he was waiting, as they say, for the other shoe to drop on his head. So, and he says, Jivaka, would you accompany? Would you take me to your teacher? And he says, of course, my lord. Now they go as far as they can with the chariots. Now they get off the chariots because it's terrain there's no roads. Now it's dark. The soldiers are there, the guards, the generals, he's well protected, but Jivaka is guiding him. And it's night in the forest. Now he gets terrified again. Ajata Sattu, the prince, well, the king now, sorry. And he holds Jivaka's hand and he says, Jivaka, is this a trap? Are you taking me to my death? Is this a trap? And he says, no, my king, no. Don't worry, I'm with you. I'm taking you to my teacher. And he says, but you said there are over 1,300, over 1,000 monks in this monastery, in the forest. 1,000. And I can't hear a peep. There's not a sound coming of people clanking and, pots and pans, noises, whispers, this and that, people laughing. There's not a sound coming. Where are these people that you're saying? He says, my lord, trust me, they're here. And Ajata said to trust, and he goes and he sees, lo and behold, they're sitting in this beautiful area, large amount of, monks, 1,000 plus. And the Buddha is sitting right there under the moon. Quiet. Look at the discipline. This was unheard of. Try to see if you can find 5 people sitting together at night without making a ruckus. Over 1,000, not 100, 1,000 plus. And so he approaches and he pays respects to the Lord Buddha, and he says, Bante, I am Ajata Sattu. The Lord Buddha says, I know. And he doesn't say, I'm here, immediately, because, I'm sorry, I've killed my father. I was responsible for it. He doesn't say those things, but he just jumps straight to the question he came with, which was, first he says, I have gone to those famous teachers of India at the time, some of whom I mentioned, like Mahavir, this and that, and Sanjaya Vilataputta, and Kisa Kambali, Ajita Kisa Kambali, among others. And he says, every one of them, I went and I asked them this question: why are you pursuing the recluseship? What is the benefit? What is the fruits of this life that you've chosen? And that's where Lord Buddha gives the beautiful discourse called Samanya Phala Sutta, which is the second of the long discourses collection. It's a long discourse, so I won't delve into that because it doesn't directly connect with the Jataka story that is what I'm leading up to. It's important to have these background, you know, information to give us a 360 understanding, what we call contextual understanding of what it is that we are discussing, what we are interested in hearing about. So Lord Buddha explains to him from basic level, like I'll give you the two examples. He says, imagine you have a servant in your palace who wakes up before you, who goes to sleep after you. And that's a term of respect, meaning the person is so dedicated to their task, to their work, to their service, that they make sure you're okay, and then they go to sleep. But they wake up before you to get everything ready. That's dedication. You don't have that these days, usually. Uh, and he says, imagine one day this slave of yours who appreciates you, who loves you, who takes care of you, one day he decides to, you know, it's difficult to live a lay life, to be, you know, I want more out of life. And let me go ahead and shave off my beard, shave off my hair, and give up my whatever as a slave or a servant has, give up this lay life and go forth and become a recluse, become a monk. And he says, after your slave has done that, you hear about this, and would you go ahead, king, and send your soldiers and men behind this person, after this person, to capture him and to bring him in so that you can punish him? And he says, of course not, Lord. Of course not. I would. In fact, he says, we would pay homage to him because what he's chosen to do is very difficult. I cannot do that, he says, to give up. Even though he's my slave, he did something I couldn't do. He says, there you go. That's the first fruit of recluseship, he says. Already, this person in this very life. So you do not have to think about something to come to you as a reward in a future life. The proof is in the pudding, as they say in English. If the person is truly living the holy life, already people see that. People who really are in tune with the Dhamma, people who are not beguiled, people who are not fooled easily, they see the genuineness of this person's hard work and dedication, and they pay respect for that to that person. So Lord Buddha gives him the example as such, and the other example is he mentions about a businessman, someone who powerful, let's say modern day corporate CEO, who gets tired of making all that money, having all that power or resources, maybe cars, houses, mansions, you know. He gives up all that and he says, this is there's got to be more to life than this. And he goes and dedicates his life to the practice of recluseship. And he works for the higher good, and which takes the form of practicing virtue, sila, purifying one's heart and body and mind. Next, working on cultivating the mind, meaning purifying it, attaining levels of meditation that were unbeknown to him, and developing wisdom. So the person becomes a different person. Personality development takes place. And he says, you hear about this businessman, banker, whatever, one time, and now he's done this. So what do you do? Do you go and send your soldiers, your spies, and you capture him and you bring him and you torture him? He says, no, 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 no. The opposite, he says. We would respect him when we see him. He says, there's another fruit of recluseship. You have that. Do you see this? He says, yes. And then Lord Buddha talks about his own journey and one step after the other as to the fruits that came in. Now, King Ajatasattu, he hears the whole discourse. It's a long discourse. It's a powerful discourse. At the end, he pays homage to the Buddha and he leaves. And the Buddha turns to his bhikkhus and he says, so sad. Had he not killed his father, he would have attained to the same level as his father had attained. He would have become a Sotapanna at the very least. That's how powerful it is. That's how damaging it is. It closes the doors for Nibbana to take place. Even though the prince was at the right place, I mean, come on, it's the Buddha teaching you. And teaching you, and you're ready. Everything is ready, but because he had committed such a horrendous crime of killing his own parent, the doors were closed for him. And that's when we hear the Buddha talk about in this Jataka, related to this Jataka. And he says there was a long time ago, there was a very wise student who was sent to, a young man who was sent to the University of Taxila. Taxila was the first major university, that documented university in the world, long before the Greeks, long before anywhere else in the world documented. And in modern day Afghanistan. Eventually, after that, a long time after that, we had the Nalanda University, which was in India. Both of these eventually were destroyed, of course, but Takshila was the oldest. So he mentioned how this wise young man goes to Takshila University and he learns, becomes a master of the sciences of meditation and all that of that time. In ancient times, it's called King Brahmadatta's time, reign. It's much earlier than the Buddha's time. We don't know exactly when. That's how early. So he returns. This teacher comes back, and he's so famous that he has around him now hundreds of students come to learn from him. One of these students is so bright and learns so much that one day he and his buddies are going into the forest, and they come across a dead tiger. A dead tiger. And friends of his, they say, wow, a dead tiger. I wonder if how, great this tiger would have been, how alive it was once, but it's dead now. Now look at it. It's like, ants and animals, insects are coming. Poor thing, is dead now. Now this young student, who was like the bright student of this teacher who had graduated from Takshila, his student, but he was a bright student, turns to his buddies, his classmates, and says, I can revive him. But what I didn't mention was that teacher who came in from Taxila gave this particular student taught him how to revive the dead. Okay? Looking at a dead corpse, and you can revive that. Okay? That's what in the Jatakas it says. So he had learned how to do this from his teacher. So he turns to his buddies and says, not to worry, I can revive the tiger. And they say, even if you can, that's a dangerous thing to be doing, don't you think? And he says, no, I can do that. Completely forgetting, ignoring the warning from his friends. You don't know what this tiger is able to do. Look at his canines, look at his teeth, the fangs. It can tear us up into pieces. He says, no, I can do this. Don't worry about it. Meanwhile, the friends are smarter than him, and they climb up a tree. They say, whatever you're going to do, we're not going to stop you, apparently. We're not able to, but we're going to protect ourselves. So he does his charm, this and that, and all of a sudden the tiger gets animated, is alive. And the moment the tiger is alive, jumps straight to his neck and tears up his larynx, he kills him. And he dies. The tiger dies back, falls down, dies, and he falls. He, as in that young student, his name was Sanjeeva. That's where we get the name of the Jataka, Sanjeeva. He falls next to this animal that he had animated, the tiger, the vicious animal that was dead. He gave it life without really weighing in all the factors, without looking at, well, what am I doing really? Do I know how powerful this animal is? Do I have the means to control him? What am I doing? Do I have cognizance? Do I have real, is my attention in the right place? Is my purpose the right purpose to animate? Or am I simply trying to show off in front of my classmates over there on the tree? So when the bhikkhus were asking about the king to the Buddha after he had left the king, the Buddha turns to the bhikkhus and says, that's not the first time where Ajatasattu had misplaced his faith, basically, in the wrong person. He trusted the wrong person. He trusted the evil ones. It's not the first time that Ajatasattu actually trusted an evil person, in this case, Devadatta. That's why he allowed himself to go down the wrong path and even commit patricide. And that's when he recounted that Jataka story, where he had placed his faith in this animal, which is a vicious animal, like Devadatta was. Devadatta just wanted to have some power, and he would pounce on anyone, anything that would make him, well, he would have some strong feelings towards. So he didn't care about his actions, just like the animal, the tiger. And the Buddha says, Sanjeeva was Ajatasattu in that life. That same Sanjeeva who got his larynx, his esophagus, his neck cut open by the fangs and the canines, the teeth of the tiger, that was Sanjeeva. That was Ajatasattu, that is king now. And guess who was the teacher that taught him how to revive the animal? That was the Bodhisattva. That was the Buddha in a past life. He was his teacher who had graduated Taxila. It's vast, sometimes we forget about the lives that we have lived. We look at this life and we say, oh, I am this person, and I have this name, I have this look, I have this height, I have this, my connections, family, this skin color, likes, dislike, this is who I am. We completely forget the countless lifetimes behind this. So the Jatakas have a message always to help us to reevaluate our decisions in this life, how we are living this life, because it matters to know. Unfortunately, we don't have as good of a memory as the Buddha did, or some of the other meditating disciples did, to be able to look back and remember all of your past lives. Now, in meditation, a person can have those qualities, develop those qualities, especially prior to or at the time of attaining arahantship, when they develop the three knowledges, they're called. First of which is the ability to look back and see your past lives. But it doesn't just happen then. It happens to, to many others when their development of meditation really is moving in the right direction for the right reason. It's a lesson. But you don't even have to remember your past lives. You can also look back at your choices you've made in this very life, the ones that you recall from this life, and see if you are doing any repetitions of those negative actions, actions that bring suffering to you or to others. So you don't necessarily have to know your past lives. If you do, even better, you have a bigger database to go through. But there's nothing fascinating about them other than what are the lessons that I need to learn so that you can skip those lions, those tigers. You don't wake them up. We think that we have the same, we have, when you encounter a certain situation, you think that this is the only time that this has happened to you. Wrong. Chances are they've happened to you before. When you become lustful towards something, when you have passion towards this, please don't think that this is the only time that this has happened to you. Just the law of averages, the statistics, if you do that, it's mind-boggling. So we've gone through all these things. Even though Mara comes in and says, no, this is the first time that's going to happen. You have. For that reason, we need to hold ourselves strong and steady on sila. Virtue is number one. That's why we take the 5 precepts. Why? To protect ourselves and protect others. So we don't do anything stupid. For the rest of his life, Ajatasattu was regretting what he had done. What a wasted opportunity. Terrible opportunity. He was the wrong place, the wrong time, you could say, meeting the wrong people. But if he had just gone back to his father and said, Dad, there's this crazy monk character showing up in my room. Who is this? And King Bimbisara would have quickly went to Lord Buddha and asked, and Lord Buddha would have called over Devadatta. What are you doing? So this has everything to do also with the companionships we have in our lives. So if he had used some intelligence, Prince Ajatasattu, he would not have befriended such a terrible, poisonous character as Devadatta. So our task then is to make sure that we don't have Devadattas in our life. We do have them, in one way or the other, sometimes in actual physical form, actual people. And in many cases, they are not even, alive as people, such as the connections we have with social media, the attachments we have, the passions we have with the news, for example, opinions of others. This has to do with trusting the purity of your heart. And if you're doubtful, go and seek out someone wiser than you. And how do you know if they are wiser? Look at their behavior. Do they have dedication to something that is greater than them? Nothing is greater than the Dhamma. Purity of the Dhamma supersedes everyone else's. In the suttas, there's a beautiful statement made by the Buddha, and he says, I looked around after attaining to Buddhahood. I wanted to pay respect to something. It's so beautiful. The Buddha is saying this in the suttas. And he says, but everywhere I look, whatever domain, whatever realm, whatever heavenly realm, whatever domain I looked at, I could not see anyone even equal to my status as a Buddha to bow down to. And then I looked at my path, the one that got me here to this. And he says, the Dhamma. And he says, the Dhamma is that one thing where it's so pure that we can pay our respect to. We can bow. Even the Buddha bowed to the Dhamma. Imagine that. Now, You don't have to be a Buddha to bow down to the Dhamma. Every time we pay respect to the sila in your heart, to the virtue and the path that you're living according to that principle, you are bowing to the Dhamma. You're living with purity. That's what distinguishes this path from everything else out there. Before it, since, because it gives you full access from this life of yours, from here. Because you have the quick, easy access to tasting virtue and the fruits of it. Fruits of recluseship are demonstrated here in your well-being. Why or how? Is there dukkha? That's already the biggest fruit of recluseship. Nibbana is what that we hear about? Nibbana. What is Nibbana? No dukkha. There you go. So I'll stop. I hope this was a another inspiring Jataka for us to dwell upon and ponder and think how to see our lives, through this scope, this prism, this lens, and make the Dhamma come alive for us. So may you be well. May the Triple Gem bless you, and may the Dhamma grow in your hearts and minds. Living with purity and doing your best in choosing the best companions that don't lead you the wrong path, but take you to the highest potential, where you live with virtue, with purity, and with ease, and with a sense of untouchable freedom that the Dhamma provides for sure in this day and age. With your help, though. Sukhiyot.